In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about glute dominance. So the relationship between the glutes and the hamstrings, and how can we make our glutes more dominant and our hamstrings less dominant. In part one, we're going to be talking about why that is important and some caveats that come along with it, because it's not just about not having any hamstrings working and always having your glutes working, or vice versa. It's about having a balance between the two. So we'll talk about why glute dominance is important, and then we'll get into how we can go about testing it. There's a few reasons why glutes should be the dominant muscle around the hip. So number one, if it's a performance gain that you want to get, this is where the power is generated. It also helps the tracking of the knee, because these muscles up here and on the outside of the hip and on the inside of the leg, they help with the tracking of the knee. If one comes overactive, then you get this knee wobble. If you're a runner, you may notice knee collapsing in as your foot strikes the floor. Same with any squatting, same with any lunging. You may notice this is the knee coming in. This is basically, let's just say, unstable hips. So the glute muscles aren't firing at the right time. So this is an opportunity to be able to get all of this working from a health perspective, working more effectively. So we've got essentially two reasons. One from just a general health perspective, in that it maintains joint health a lot better, in that it tracks the knee, which then will go on and track where the foot and the ankle go. And then also from a performance perspective, they are the power generators. What we don't want to be doing is we don't want to be having over-dominant quads or over-dominant hamstrings. We want the glutes to do most of the work and then just allow these to relax. And then the final one is, if you have tight hamstrings, there is a good chance that your glutes aren't working properly to stabilise the pelvis. And your hamstrings are becoming tight to try and do that job. So if we can get the glutes dominant, they may not go completely sort of 100% flexible in the fact that you can lift your leg further off the floor, but it will certainly improve. So what we will do now is we will go into the next part, which is about how we go about testing it, how we go about measuring it, and then what you can start to do to start improving it. In the first part, we'll talk about how we can test and measure it. And essentially all we're going to do is we're going to do a bridge. But what we want to be able to do in a bridge is something very specific, and basically connect our brain to our glutes and our hamstrings. And we want to be able to tense the glutes and relax the hamstrings. And there's one thing that we can do to help that process. Now again, I'm not much of a fan of relying on outside aids to be able to facilitate how our body works. We need to be able to do that from ourselves, but as a good, easy, practical way of learning that, we can use a resistance band. Now you don't have to use this, but it is a nice sort of training aid to be able to learn on how to get the glutes more active and how to switch the hamstrings off. And what it will do as well is it will highlight the relationship between glute medius, medial hamstrings, adductors, so on and so forth. So with regards to the test itself, before we come on to that, all we need to do is come down into this bridge position. Now, it's very simple. We lift the hips. Then what we look to do is tense the glutes. So this is the first part of it. So we want to be able to feel the glutes squeezing. Now you can just feel that, or you can literally feel it with your hands and go, right, my glutes are on. I can feel them. I can feel my glute max at the back, and it's working. Now, the second part is the important part, which is the hamstrings, which is what is dominating, or what is the relationship between the glutes and the hamstrings. So we come up. Now for me, because obviously I've practiced this, I've been working on it, when I come up, my glutes are on and I can relax, I can feel that there is relaxation through my hamstrings. And that's just me prodding it. Now what you might find is that they're rock solid. So all you have to do is focus on squeezing the glutes and then trying to relax the hamstrings. Now again, it's going to feel very unnatural to start with, but it is a skill to develop and to work on. So what can happen now, if you are having trouble with relaxing the hamstrings whilst you do the bridge, this is where the resistance band comes in. So what we do is we put this on and we pop it around the knees. And then what we do is exactly the same. We come up, we squeeze on the glutes, and we just push out on the bands very gently. So what this is doing, this is getting the glute medius, glute minimus working a lot more. And what you should find is that even the hamstrings are loose, and quite possibly the adductors as well, on both sides. So what we've done there is we've understood the relationship between all these muscles. That when these get switched on, hamstrings, adductors start to relax because the glute medius, glute minimus, glute maximus are doing their job more effectively. As soon as we take this off and these aren't working as effectively, something else has got to pick up the slack, which is the medial hamstring and the adductors, which is why so many people have very tight hamstrings because they're so overactive that they are just ripped tight the whole time. So as soon as we can start getting the glute muscles working that much more effectively, then these hamstrings will start to come down and you will notice that there is a little bit more range of movement within them. So that is essentially how we test the glute dominance and how we get the relationship between the hamstrings and the glutes back into some degree of balance. Because as I mentioned at the start, it's not about not having your hamstrings working because they play an essential part in lifting exercises, in leg exercises, in running, so on and so forth. But if we've got rock solid hamstrings and not so active glutes, then there's a problem there. Because as I've mentioned, if we want healthy hips and we want fitness and performance from our hips, then we need them working effectively, glute maximus, glute medius and glute minimus. So we need to readdress that balance and we need to get the glutes more active so that the hamstrings can essentially do their play their supporting role, which is exactly what they are for the glutes. They are a supporter of the glutes when we are running, cycling, lifting, whatever it may be. So that's how we can test them. Then we need to talk about how we can measure that and how we can go about improving that. Very simply, if we're talking about measuring it, we've gone through the test on how we can do it. Now, let's just say it's a subjective test. It is not a definite test to say glutes are 100% on, hamstrings are 0% on, or glutes are 70% on, hamstrings are 30% on. We aren't able to measure that, but what we can do is if you go into that position and you can't feel your glutes working, and then you go through my How to Build Core Strength and Stability 12-week program, for example, if you go through that program and then retest at the end or retest at 4 weeks, 8 weeks and 12 weeks, you will notice that there is a difference between the relationship in your glutes and in your hamstrings. You will be able to understand that the hamstrings are slightly more slack and the glutes are slightly more tensed. So it's very much having some sort of, now that you've got the test, some sort of program in order to measure it. And then when it comes to the improving of it, again, as I've mentioned, you'll need that program. And what I've been able to do for people that want to do it is the How to Build Core Strength and Stability program, which is not just about the abdominal wall. It's about the whole torso. So basically from the hips up to the shoulders. So from the ball and socket joints of the hips to the ball and socket joints of the shoulder. That's what we are there to develop throughout that program. So if you test yourself with regards to your glutes here, your glutes and your hamstrings, go and enroll in the program, which is just clicking the link below. And then you can find out a little bit more about it, and then you can go onto the program and enroll on it, and then you can start the process of training the torso, training the muscles to be more active, training certain muscles to be less active, and then by the weeks 4, 8 and 12, or weeks 8 and 12, or just week 12. You can retest everything, and then you can see the improvement that you've made the relationship between the glutes and the hamstrings that much more effective, which is going to be better for your health, your joint health, and also your joint fitness and performance, if you will. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Chris for Whole Training. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.